I think Trump has wildly misplayed U.S. power and influence by thinking Putin is his friend. And Putin has played Trump. Insanely.
President Zelensky says the chance now is significant to reach an agreement to stop the war with Russia. His comments come ahead of a meeting between Ukraine, European leaders and US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Berlin. Matthew Bryza is a former US ambassador and State Department official. Matthew, welcome to the programme.
Thanks so much, Kello. Great to be with you. Good morning.
Good to speak to you. Thanks for joining us. Is it fair to say that the only side not to have evolved their stance in terms of the plan for peace is Russia? Who is really in charge here? Who's driving this thing?
Yeah, well, I think President Putin has not altered his goals at all. He has maximalist goals, right? It's essentially to dismantle Ukraine as an independent state and then press NATO to pull back from where it enlarged, back 20 years ago. And he hasn't budged from those demands at all. So in a sense, he's driving the train. And I think President Trump is putting a lot of pressure on Zelensky and European allies, including the UK. And so that statement you just read by Zelensky is optimistic, but I think it's Zelensky trying to protect himself against President Trump's pressure and not yet optimistic that President Putin has decided to back off his maximalist demands yet. Yeah.
Should we take some reassurance from the fact these meetings are happening at all?
Definitely. I mean, conversation, negotiation is necessary. Look, every war in human history has ended. And it has ended with a negotiation in which the sides have to moderate and reduce their demands and come up with a compromise. So thank goodness the discussions are happening. I spent time in Moscow as a U.S. diplomat and working in Moscow for decades. And the Russian approach is you press for everything you can possibly get until the other side backs down. And that's the process that's happening now.
Why is Russia able to do that, though, Matthew? Why do they get away with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because, number one, it intimidates Europeans. It intimidated the Biden administration as well through threats of using nuclear weapons. And as a senior Russian politician once told me, you Americans need to understand that power is fear. We instill fear in others and get what we're maximally going for. And, we in our what do we want to call it, civilization, we try to get along and we think it matters that people like us. And the Russian side it's like playing a sport, like playing hockey. You beat the other guy, you pound him if you need to, get whatever you can. And if you have to back off, you back off. But not until you have to.
Well, it also means that trust is nothing. It's worthless. There is no such thing in these sorts of conversations.
Absolutely. From the Russian side, I think you're absolutely right. Trust is not what matters. It's power that matters. But for us, trust does matter. And our dialogue, the way we speak, our language is different than the Russian way. And I think President Trump actually respects that. He thinks that President Putin is pressing maximally for his country's national interests. And if you read the U.S. latest national security strategy, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Tomorrow, Monday, Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, is hosting Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, of course, and Emmanuel Macron, the French President, along with President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Trump's envoys. Why wouldn't Trump be going at this point? Is he just going to step in when there's a victory lap to take?
Yes, he's going to step in when there's a victory lap to take. He's not engaged on the details of this or really anything. He's not a details person when it comes to something other than a business deal or a real estate deal. And so I think Trump perceives himself as keeping the pressure on everybody by not showing up, just sending his envoy while all these heads of state and heads of government are participating. So he thinks he's sending a signal that you guys better get your act together and wrap things up if you want me to participate and close the deal.
Yeah. So if Trump was suddenly to decide to go, that would be a positive indication.
It would. Yeah. It would suggest that he believes that the two sides are on the verge of an agreement that he can show up and magically kind of wrap up. But I think they're far from that. Until President Putin softens his demands, I think unfortunately, this horrible war is going to continue.
Yeah, the Trump administration has sort of played around, I suppose, to be generous, with sanctions on Russia as a negotiating diplomatic tool, I suppose. We've said before that these things take time to actually kind of have an impact, and so there's always questions about whether these should have happened sooner. In your assessment, has the Trump administration played its hand well?
It has not. It has waited way too long to put the pressure on Russia. If you look at tariff policy, Russia has no tariffs on it since President Trump came to office. It's amazing. There are very few countries in the world, including the U.S.'s closest allies, who have not had tariffs applied to them. But he hasn't applied them to Russia. I think Trump has wildly misplayed U.S. power and influence by thinking Putin is his friend, and Putin has played Trump. Insanely, knowing that Trump really wants to get along with Putin. So Trump thinks that Putin has moved and has become more pliable and has become more reasonable in his demands. But as I've said a couple of times, President Putin has not softened his demands at all. But Trump thinks he's moved Putin along, and that Zelensky is the one who is somehow responsible for a war that President Putin chose to launch against Ukraine.
One of my other fascinations here, Matthew, is who is not at the table in Berlin today and tomorrow during these talks. And there's been reporting of a real sense of dissatisfaction from Poland in the last few days. Once one of the West's kind of strongest voices on Ukraine, but now Poland, Warsaw and its leaders having to really fight to get even in the room. And the argument is easy to make. There are 1 million Ukrainian refugees in Poland. It is the key supply hub for Ukraine. But also, Poland is NATO's highest per capita spender on defence and wants to more than double its military, which is already NATO's third biggest military, but it wants to get to 500,000. Is there a question here about who's not been included in these crucial, potentially vital, actually, talks?
Absolutely, there is. And if you go back to the 2014 period, when Russia first or last time invaded Ukraine, and there was the whole 2013, the Maidan and the ouster of the pro-Russian leader Yanukovych, Poland was one of the brokers of the negotiations, together with the UK and Germany and France, and to exclude Poland, which is the ultimate frontline state. Besides all those very important factors you mentioned, Carlo, it's right there on the border with Ukraine. Has a very complex history with Ukraine. Is a mighty European power right now. To me, it's just inexplicable that Macron and Merz and Starmer haven't said we have to have Poland at the table. I just don't understand it, and I think it's a big mistake because Poland, in my experience, having begun my diplomatic career in Poland in 1989, Poland understands Russia as well as any country in Europe, and I think a lot better than the U.S. and with all due respect, UK, France, and Germany understand Russia.
Yeah, well, I think that's valid. I think the kind of the talking shop of the coalition of the willing has been exactly that, and so criticism is not misplaced. Matthew, thank you so much. Thanks for speaking to us. Good to speak to you. That's Matthew Bryza, former US ambassador under President Obama and former State Department official as well.